Elevation Nation. We have a special guest. Again, what's so beautiful about having a podcast in a community of elevators is they introduce us to other incredible people that are elevating out there in the world. So I have to give a shout out to Alana Dunn, who's a part of our Elevation Nation community, for the introduction to our next guest, Orly Israel. You may have seen him on Instagram, on TikTok with Orly's Listening Table. But he's more than just a great listener. He's got a story to tell. And we're excited to put a microphone in front of his face today so we can all share a little bit of the knowledge that you've learned with your listening table and honestly your life, Orly. I'm so excited, man, to welcome you to Elevation Nation. Welcome to the podcast.
So excited to be here.
I am pumped. This is awesome. Sam called me. I don't know when it was, Sam. How long ago? A month or so?
About a month.
Whatever.
Yeah.
He's like, this guy Orly, he's the man. Oh my gosh, we're gonna have a great conversation, and I love great conversations. I mean, this is exciting. Woo! Rounding out the day with a great conversation. Orly, obviously, great to meet you, but we have to get you to introduce yourself to Elevation Nation. We ask everyone to give an elevator pitch. Let's head the elevator pitch. You've done your homework. Let's hear it.
All right, so my name is Orly Israel. And my pitch is, I'm a guy trying to learn how to be a better communicator. I heard once that learning how to communicate is a lot like learning how to swim. You could take as many classes on swimming as you want, but until you get in the water, you won't know if you can do it or not. And so I started this listening table as an opportunity to swim. I took a communication class, and I was like, great, got to get real experience. So I set up a table. I call it my listening table. It says, here to listen, no judgment, no advice, no charge. I just sat out in public. I've probably done it. I did my 82nd table today, this afternoon. And I am trying to learn how to be a better listener, better communicator, so I can help other people stop fighting with their family, realize they're in control of 100% of the things they say, that everything you say is your choice, and how to learn that, not being a therapist, not being a psychologist, just a regular, everyday person trying to learn how to have conversations with people on a better level and spread it. That's basically me.
It's an incredible mission, an incredible story. Such a great elevator pitch. I'm glad that you did your homework and maybe practiced a little bit because that was beautiful. And Orly, I want to get into before the table a little bit because you and I got to get to know each other a little bit better about a month ago when we first met. And your story's pretty incredible, and we realized all three of us have a very, very strange experience in common. All three of us we've gone to prison. And that's pretty unique, I would say, to have a room full of three guys that have gone to prison. So I think maybe, Parker, why don't you start us off by telling that story to Elevation Nation and Orly, and then Orly, we'd love to hear about your experience as well.
Yeah,
what a hook.
I robbed Sam of like $100,000, and then they sent me to prison. No, I'm kidding. Elevation Nation. We've talked about this on the podcast. If you're like one of the OG Elevation Nation listeners from way back when, we actually did an episode on our trip to prison. But as part of Yom Kippur, the day, what was it, back in college, Sam, right? We volunteered to go to a local prison in Virginia to meet with people who were in the prison and have conversations related to the holiday about repentance, about just God and life and Judaism and everything in general, but with prisoners. And Sam and I to this day say that was probably one of the, if not the most, interesting, amazing, incredible learning experience of my life, honestly. So Orly, were you in prison for the same reason, or did you actually commit a crime?
I didn't commit a crime. I did not. Well, maybe I did, but they're all alleged, and also I wasn't in prison because of the crimes. What I went to do was volunteering at this organization called Freedom to Choose. And this organization is a huge part of why I'm doing my listening table. They basically, and this is a very surface level description of something that is incredible and deep, they do the listening table in prison. for people in prison who don't feel like they have someone to talk to, who might not know, and this is a super important part of it, who just haven't had that emotional, social life education, things we take for granted, like forgiveness and kindness and being able to express yourself. If you don't have a role model who can do that in your life, things we take for granted, you can't do it. You don't know it's an option. And so doing this experience in prisons, which we had to stop because the pandemic started, really changed my opinion on what I thought was common knowledge. And I learned a lot of people who were there aren't there because they did something they did that was bad on purpose, but they did the best thing that they thought was available to them, the best option, which just happened to be illegal and sometimes what we would think is wrong. But if you don't know you can do anything better, if you don't know you can forgive someone or who to help you, what are your other options? And so that's what freedom to choose is all about. And that really inspired me to bring what I learned there to outside.
It's it's such a unique experience that very few get to have. And that's why I freaked out when you told me a little bit about your volunteer work, because it is something that is extremely powerful. And we talked a little bit about the concept of privilege, right? We grew up with the privilege that we learned, to your point, how to listen properly, how to cope with issues, how to deal with conflict and confrontation and arguments. And, perhaps to some people out there listening, they say, well, everyone can learn that stuff. Like, I don't know if I necessarily agree. When you're born in a broken household where your normal reactions from, being a young kid to conflict is arguments, fighting, perhaps doing illegal things, then in your mind, when you are a malleable, influenced young kid, you then adopt that morality and those concepts of what's good and bad. And so I really do think that we are so privileged to have learned some of the differences between right and wrong and how to cope with things. And that's why I love, this project, Orly, and what they all are doing there with Freedom to Choose, because that's kind of how we hopefully can teach people who maybe have made mistakes the differences between right and wrong. So thank you for what you're doing. We will link to that incredible organization in the bio of the podcast because I want people to learn a little bit more about it. And we'll also link to the one that Parker and I went on as well. So thank you for sharing that story. Yeah, go ahead, please.
When you were there, when you guys had this life-changing experience, which I totally get, were you surprised by how normal the people were? Did they seem like they were different, like unrelatable people?
I'll say one unique thing, and then I know Parker has thoughts. One thing that instantly connected us was the fact that they all were Jewish. Whether they had converted within prison or were born Jewish, instantly when we went in there, we were there to celebrate a holiday and to repent with them. And so that was that common bond that was really interesting to me, of that religion transcends prison walls. And as you get to know someone, they became more and more normal, laughing, telling jokes with us in there. It was unique. Parker, what do you think?
Yeah. I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you still. Your video just cut out. Parker, on my end, it's saying recording continues smoothly. Live video will return when their internet improves.
Y'all can't see me?
Oh, Parker may have run out of space on his hard drive to store this. Right, Parker? Okay, take a second.
I got nowhere to be. It's all good.
I do love this topic because this is like your origin story, Orly, and I just love that we have this in common because I think it's so freaking crazy.
Who would have thought? Jews who'd been to prison.
Yeah,
Sounds like its
right?
own podcast.
The hard part, and I know we're cutting this part out, the hard part with ours, Orly, was most of these guys were like child predators, the ones that we were with.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, like, so, like, it's hard to talk about, like, that, like, I mean, I don't want to get into it, obviously, on the podcast, but, like, it was really weird talking about repentance with, like, guys who did stuff like that, you know?
Damn. Yeah.
It's great, like, just different.
Very
Okay.
different.
We're good. We're back.
Okay.
All right, so basically, I'll be interesting on the back end.
Yeah,
how
cut that out of the podcast.
I piece all of this together. But okay, back to what I was
We're
saying.
talking about, like, how
Yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So first night, so nervous. Like, oh my gosh, Sam, I know you remember. We had Noah lead the service, and at first I was very hesitant to talk and chime in and communicate. You know, when you think of a prisoner, we all have our expectations kind of set, right? And then we went to bed, woke up the next day, and had a full day of prayer and conversation. And to your point, Orly, about how I expected them to be, but then in reality, who these individuals actually were, like, to see some of these people tell their life story and begin to cry and begin to smile and laugh at our jokes and all of, you know, it just makes you feel like, wow, like, although these individuals at some point in their life, maybe it was 2 years ago or maybe 25 years ago, we met someone who had been in there for 30 years, made a bad decision. It brought this whole new idea to me that, like, we're all still human. We all still laugh. We all still smile.
I'm sure. Yeah, man.
And so, Orly, this experience essentially kind of inspired you, in part, to want to learn how to be a better listener yourself. Is that right?
Yeah, it was part of kind of like a braid of three things. The first was just growing up in a family with siblings, you know, two younger brothers, just fighting all the time. Classic. A classic thing that I thought was normal until at one point I realized, wait, I don't have to say the mean thing back. What if I could just control how if I could just realize I'm in control of everything I say, which was crazy to me as like a 15-year-old or a 13-year-old. And then, do we have him?
He's yeah, it's all good. You can keep going. It's still recording. Parker he must have went back, but
All good. As a 13-year-old, realizing I had control of what I say,
yeah,
cutting it back in. And then also when I kind of got into college and the entrepreneurial movement and social media kind of was really happening. And now you realize, communication, it's everything in business. You got to be able to manage a team. You got to be able to talk to your clients. You got to be able to appeal to audiences. And so much of a kind of motion towards communication in business, and at the same time, all about education in prison. And then off to the side, family therapy is a thing for when crap hits the fan. But everyone else in the middle, if you're not in prison or leading in business, no one really pays attention to what you can improve with. And I got to learn how to do this, and I got to help people get along because I have such a better life because I'm working on my communication skills all the time. And I'm like, if I can have this, it's easy. It really is. You just have to know more options to give yourself the freedom to choose different things you could say, ways you could respond. And that all built together into saying, well, I want to do something. I want to do it publicly so that I can help spread a message.
it's such a cool origin story. And I want to highlight something that I think is really unique about that, Orly, is, Parker and I, we mentor a lot of young kids who have just starting out their careers or trying to get internships and jobs. And many of them, they ask me the same thing. It's like, well, I have the summer free, or, I'm not on a project right now at work. What skills can I get? What can I work on? Should I teach myself coding? Like, should I learn a language? Should I learn data analytics? Like, should I go on Udemy or Coursera or YouTube or Khan Academy? Right? Like, they throw out all these ideas because that's what we were taught within school, is to try to find new skills, try to upskill ourselves. Mm-hmm. But we're picking these complex, should I do a machine learning course? Like, you decided to go back to the basics. I want to learn how to listen. I want to be a better communicator. And it's sad because we make that seem like it's simple, because it's something we've done from when we first learned how to talk, right? We've communicated for so long. Yeah. And so we make it seem like we've had years to do it, and therefore, well, we must be good at it then. And right. I think that's just such a mistake. It's such a misnomer. Like, no, not necessarily. You've done it for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, but have you done it well? And how can you improve on that? And I love that you have that mentality. I think that's so cool.
Well, shout out to you for loving that. I appreciate it. I think about it like this. You learn how to communicate at the same time in life that you learn how to walk and you learn how to eat. And you couldn't put an item of food in front of me that I couldn't put in my mouth and eat. It's like no contest, not even blink. I'll eat it. I can walk. No problem. But eventually in your life, you'll learn that some things are bad for you to eat. And if you want to have a different kind of lifestyle, eating actually becomes a lot more complicated than just putting something in your mouth and swallowing it. And I see communication as something that's just the same. It's automatic. No one has to teach you how to eat. No one has to teach you how to sleep. No one has to teach you how to walk or run. But once someone does teach you how to eat or how to get better sleep, maybe, I don't know about that one, like, there's no going back. And with communication, it's the same thing. Once someone says, hey, this is, it's not just how it is. You don't just have to be like that. The sky's the limit. What if every conversation you had could be fun? You guys do a really good job about it.
Well, thank you.
Does every conversation need to be fun?
Conversations can be serious, for sure. But does that mean you can't have a good time having it? Any good negotiation is like, you want to create a win-win situation for both parties, even if you're trying to get the better deal in business. On a harder emotional level, like a breakup, the hardest conversations to possibly have. You are ultimately, someone is doing what's best for them and trying to probably do it kindly if they can. And so I wouldn't call it fun, but I think that in the sense that snowboarding down a mountain that you're not qualified to snowboard down is, once you're on the other side of it, you go, holy shit, I'm alive and I feel good. But when you're on that mountain, you're locked in. You're in every fiber of your being is trying to make sure you don't hit a tree or fall off a cliff because you're locked in. And, is that fun? I don't know. But after you get through to the other side, satisfying.
There's so much with communication that I think is overlooked, right? It's not just we are talking. And I want to give an example, right? Obviously, Parker and I have a podcast. Yeah. And within a podcast, you are meeting a new person. You are having both a fun conversation and a meaningful, deep, impactful conversation, right? We're talking.
At least on our podcast.
At least on ours, yeah. We're listening. And then the third piece is we're trying to tell a story, right? You're learning how to be a storyteller. And I think there are levels to communication as you improve and as you grow those skill sets. It's about listening to what Orly has to say, coming up with an articulate thought based off of that, coming full circle and telling a story, being captivating. It reminds me of something funny. I don't know if either of you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm at all. Fantastic show, Larry David. And there's one episode about dinner parties in this concept of the middling the dinner party, and how the middle, that sits at the dinner table has to be one that gets both sides of the table involved in the conversation and passes information from the left side to the right side. The facilitator. And I think that's a comedic and hilarious interpretation of why communication is a dead skill set that only some people have, that ability to tell stories across the table, converse, listen, and speak. And so I'm just happy in Orly that you're kind of bringing to light that this is probably an underrated skill set in the modern age with young people, and something that we do all need to work at and learn and grow.
Shout out to me, man. Shout out to you guys for boosting me, bringing me into the nation. If you're in the nation, you ought to get involved. I mean, I have people, because I do my table every weekend, and hopefully I'll be doing it more and more as we expand into the new year. But I also invite people to join me as listeners, as silent listeners, where I sit at the table and you sit at the table with me, and you just sit there silently, and I'll have a conversation with somebody, mostly listening. All listening, but, sometimes you talk. And they'll just sit there silently. And, can you sit silently for 2 hours? Well, yes, you can. Absolutely, you can. But also, it's incredible how every person that sat with me has told me afterwards, it's totally changed the way I think about communication.
What is it that has changed their perspective?
Well, there is a concept of wanting to be heard that everybody generally feels. When someone's sharing something, and most of the conversations at the table specifically are like things people have to get off their chest, so they have a little bit of a heavier, it's not everyone that comes up to the table and says, I love shrimp. Shrimp is my favorite food. One guy did, love him for it. Occasionally people say, I'm just having a great day. I'm so happy. My daughter just ran a marathon. Yeah, rarely. But if you are able to have a space where you can just be there. Here's a great example, Parker. Could you survive if this hour-long or 30-minute-long podcast was just me and Sam talking and you couldn't say a word the whole time? Could you handle it? Yes, you could. First of all, I'll answer that for you because you can't say a word right now. You could handle it, and you would also realize that there might be questions that you want to ask and things you want to say that would get in the way of maybe me or Sam saying something that is amazing and profound. And just like, this is where it's going, and maybe you want to know something. It's impossible to run both scenarios to see how it works both times. But a lot of the times you'll find that what you want to say, like, oh, I've also been to prison. Here's our experience. There's nothing wrong with you guys sharing it. I really appreciate it. But there's a lot of times where you want to say, like, this is my part of it. I also understand this. But by making it about you, you've taken away from them. And maybe you're trying to make them feel like you understand them. But sometimes you'll realize a lot of the things I wanted to say, they didn't really add anything. They just added my voice. And then you start to realize that you already know 99.9% of what you're going to say. Like, you know it. You're not going to say anything, for the most part, that you don't already know. And anything someone else can say can change your life. And occasionally, yeah, maybe you're freestyle rapping just off the top of your head, and you spit a bar that just changes your life. It's so profound. Totally can happen. Big fan of it. But the chance that someone else says something that changes your life is a lot higher than the chance that you say something that changes your life.
That was a pretty good quote right there.
Parker, you're allowed to talk again now.
I know. I was going to say it would be a difficult podcast to do just Sam running it while I'm sitting here. Even though I'm up for it, Orly, if you invite me, I would love to sit and listen. I think it's something that's so interesting that comes to mind for, I just the way I think about everything we're talking about right now is, for example, Sam and I, we work in consulting, right? We have high-profile meetings with high-profile clients and high stakes generally in those meetings. And oftentimes, as a young adult, I sit in the room and I feel like other people who are in, similar situations as me sit in the room and they feel like they have to talk and they have to have their voice be heard to kind of feel their value in the situation. And if they're not speaking, then they themselves will determine, wow, I didn't provide anything to the conversation, therefore my value is nothing. And I think as I gotten older and have, Sam and I have been working for a while now since after college, it's like, it's okay to not have anything to say. Even if I even think it's like my voice becomes even more profound and respected in the room if I have one thing to say or one question to ask rather than speak the entire time. And that's taken a while for me to learn because I've always thought, wow, I got to talk. I got to be the one driving the meeting, the one who's talking and making the decisions and everything, when in reality, how much value is that really adding to the conversation? Whereas I care more about asking one or two really good questions and allowing the other people who I'm working with drive the conversations. In that case, the client, because the client obviously feels happier and they feel more fulfilled if they're able to share their perspectives.
Yeah. People love talking.
I want to ask a question, Orly, to you on, I've been thinking a lot about this concept of your shadowers that can sit there and just listen. Obviously, we can't do this because we're having a conversation where there's back and forth. So we can't do it on the podcast now. But I'm trying to think of a time that I was in a conversation that I knew I didn't have to potentially speak or respond to anything. So to Parker's point, in these meetings that you have in business sometimes, you may be the lowest person on the totem pole, but you still are a little on edge thinking about, well, what if they called on me or asked me a question? And so you're still not able to fully turn off your predictive response brainwaves that are thinking about what the next thing is that you should say. I think you are providing something extremely rare. I mean, I off the top of my head, I can't really think of any other conversations where you can fully be in the conversation, acknowledged, but not have to speak.
Hey, you ever I don't know where your guys' parents are in relation to you, but you ever bring a friend home to meet your parents?
Yeah. Okay.
Your parents ever just ask a bunch of questions?
Once upon a time.
That's a
you
great
don't need
example.
to say anything. Your parents will ask every question they can think of, and there is no answer that you need to give. They'll just do the whole thing. And you know what? You might learn something about your friend that you never knew until your mom asked.
That was such a great example. I never thought of that. That's a good point. You're on autopilot mode. You're like, all right, mom's grilling Parker again. Like, let me sit back and see what funny things he's gonna say.
Absolutely. I mean, if I make a new friend, which I like to do sometimes, I'll invite him over to my parents' house and I'll be like, "Yup, kick my feet up and learn everything that I wouldn't ask." And my mom always tells me, "Oh, you say you're such a good communicator. You didn't ask where they went to high school or their favorite ice cream flavor." She asks better questions than that. But no, I don't need to. You're going to do that. I'll find out.
But do you think you're part of the conversation then? Does your mom see you as part of the conversation then, if you're not speaking?
That brings a really good question to me that I haven't really thought out. But what is part of the conversation? Where do you draw the line? Because I'm listening to it. If I walk out of the room, probably not part of the conversation. If I'm there, just sitting, yeah.
Well,
I'd say
this brings up something fascinating to me. Is we're talking about this concept societally of being part of the conversation. And Parker, you mentioned earlier, when we're in this business meetings, a lot of people think that in order to feel like they are adding value to this conversation, they need to speak. Can we blame those people for thinking that? Because as a society, we tend to only remember the people that spoke up.
Absolutely.
Because our attention turns to them. We don't appreciate listening as much anymore, do we?
Yeah, and there's some study. I mean, there's a million studies, but the person who speaks the most is seen as the most important person. This is a general trend. Totally fine. And then the question is, like, who cares what people think? I don't, at this point, in certain situations. Look, if it's a work project and I work with teams for my life and my job, which is not just sitting around listening to people, I work in TV, which I can just very off to the side. It is also a lot of sitting around listening to people because stories are being told and you have to hear them and be conscious. But if the show gets made, the show gets made. Does it matter if I'm the guy who asks the question that 4 other people had on the tip of their tongue waiting to say the thing? I don't care. It's less work for me. But there is also the line where if there's something no one else sees, yeah, you should speak up. I pretty much make it a habit of just being the guy who's the youngest guy in the room who every once in a while says something sweet because no one else said it yet. But I could be in a meeting, and if everyone's covering everything that needs to be covered, I'm good. I know what I bring to the table. I bring it in the intangibles and the tangibles all the time because, you know, documents and stuff goes around, and I produce them. But I think it comes down to, this is a big part of self-awareness, self-communication. Like, who really cares if somebody from a company that you're working with thinks you're cool? You get the job done. Your team gets the job done.
I don't know if society, like, the end goal is to get the job done. But I do think that whatever's done in between is really important. And there's times where we feel as if we have to be the one speaking, have to be the ones driving conversation, have to be the one contributing in some way. And I think in a conversation, sometimes the only way you can contribute, I think when we talk societally speaking, is by speaking. Rather than, to your point, I'm contributing if I'm listening very thoughtfully.
Yeah. Because I got a message. Like, now I'm going from listening mode to I got to spread this message of listening for sure. I got a point to make. I got to tell everybody. Question I like to ask people, bring this to your own party, use this all the time when I'm trying to have conversations. I'm not a hardline, how are you is a bad question guy, because I think that's like a hot take that nobody, like, how are you is a great question if it's asked earnestly and in the right conversation. How are you in passing, fine, is whatever. But I ask people, what do you want me to know about you? It's a fun question to ask. If they got nothing to say, I got nothing to talk to you about. Fine, I'll find somebody else who wants to talk about something. And if they ask me, what do I want them to know? I say, well, you should follow me on social media because I'm trying to reach 100,000 followers. And also, I'm trying to change your mind about listening. If you don't want to hear about it and don't want me to know anything, then, like, we're good. I got other conversations I can have.
I love it. I mean, sometimes just being blunt and honest is the right way to do it. We have a lot of these niceties in society that honestly make us worse listeners, right? Because we say, how are you? Do we actually listen or care what their response is? No, for the most part.
It's usually the same thing every single time. Good.
Good, how are you?
You know, good, how are you? Good. It's become like the extension of hello. It's just hello, right. How are you? Good. And then everyone's just almost like wired to say that now. It's not like, oh, how are you? Well, today was interesting because I did this, and this. You get that so rarely, I feel like, now.
Right. And also it's like it's a invasive question sometimes, you know. How are you? I'm actually doing really badly, but we're like already past each other in the hallway. So if you really want to listen, then like tell me you're here. How are you? I got 30 minutes. What's going on? Better. That's the extension.
Orly,
I like it, though. How are you is a great question. You just have to be prepared to hear the answer because everyone's going through something. Good or bad.
If people are honest about it. Exactly. If people are honest about their answer, it can be an interesting one. If they don't result in the reflex answer. It's just, again, I think Obviously, there's like linguistics professors and people who study linguistics around the world, but some of those societal communicative norms I find just so fascinating. And I'm sure you, now that you just listen purely, pick up on a lot of them. Even silly ones like what I just did, saying like and right? Space fillers in communication as our brain processes what we're trying to say. What are some interesting things that you've noticed as you've learned how to become a better listener that people do?
It's a good question. I'm also not a hardline mad at like or ums or actually or, because I'm a big fan of getting the job done. And if you get the job done, if the other person, you guys specifically, have such a fun relationship on this podcast, and I'm almost disappointed that you guys weren't beefing about something when we opened up.
Oh my
because
God.
that would have been hysterical if you.
We can
had
get
something.
there. We can get there. And maybe that's part of the game plan.
Okay, yeah, I'm here for it. The thought is, if I can come across and say any combination of words that lets you know I'm here to have a good time and we're friends, I've succeeded. Like or ums, I could make up 7 words that no one's ever heard of and just blast them at you, and you'll be like, I don't know what he's talking about, but he's clearly having a good time, and I think we're friends. What else do you need? So have I noticed anything is the question, right?
Yeah, anything unique that humans do, that we communicate, that you really, from listening, you've picked up on.
I think that doing my listening table, I have a big sign that says here to listen on it. And so many people walk by and say how cool it is. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. A lot of couples walk by, husband and wives mostly, who say, oh, you should talk. I can park my wife here for 2 hours. I'll be back. Or my husband could learn a bunch of things from you. And I think that it is so interesting how obvious it is to people that good listening is something you can do, and how clear it is for people to say, oh yeah, I'm not really a good listener. And they're just like, all right, deuces, okay, sure. The awareness is there. There's not much that I say to people, because every once in a while someone asks me what my story is, and they sit down and I tell them for 10 minutes how I grew up and what I learned and what I think is important. Everyone goes, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I'm like, yeah, you guys are probably familiar with the 10,000 hours makes you a master concept. Every single person listening to this podcast, except 6-year-old Richard in New Jersey, you guys' oldest, youngest fan, every one of you guys has 10,000 hours of communication under your belt. You're already a master. You got it. You got the tools. Nothing I say is get changed the way you play. The fundamentals. You just need to learn how to use them differently. But you can. Once you hit that level, you're, oh, I got this. This makes so much sense. I already know how to do it. It's not like you're learning how to jump higher.
What's the problem? Like, why? If we know how to do it, what is it in American society? I think about this. What is it in American society where people struggle to exercise that listening muscle more than we would expect?
I think that we know how to talk, and we know how to try and make sure people understand the words. We're all fluent. The fluent people are fluent. But that doesn't mean we're able to communicate properly. I say elegantly. I think that a word I use a lot is sloppy. Anyone can communicate sloppy. Like yelling at somebody in an argument is just a bad move across the board. You're never really trying to win an argument if you just start blasting your voice at somebody's head. If you want to end on the same page where, hey, you know what? My take is this and your take is that, but I think you should have my take. You can have that conversation, a discussion where you both end up, oh, yeah, I actually do understand this, instead of you've intimidated me into feeling like you're right, and if I'm wrong, I'll be somehow worse off. You guys probably get this in the workplace all the time. Like, you want it to feel like a good idea. Even if somebody is doing the wrong thing, shifting course is ultimately a win-win. And I think that yelling at people, relationships have fights in them, but they don't need to. You really don't need to, especially if this is the person you love. I think that people, they're just sloppy. They got the skills. They just don't use them elegantly because they think, like, it's their problem. They don't get it. I wouldn't have to yell at you if you just understood my point. I don't know, man. It's a great question. I'm trying to find out. I'm going to go drive around the country with my listening table at some point very soon and try and understand the difference in culture, because living in California and you guys living in New York, there's a whole bunch of other country that think we're one type of way where everyone else is a different type of way. And it's not just like one size fits all. That's a really important thing about communication skills, is it really isn't one size fits all. Even with social groups, you might have a group where, like you guys specifically, talk over each other all the time because you're friends and that's how you vibe. And like, that if you're boring, the other person's going to talk about something more interesting. And you know what? You're probably more interested in their thing than your thing. And if you really need to make a point, then you'll just throw it right back. And at the same time, there might be someone else from a different friend group where everyone finishes their sentences and responds politely. And it's no less friendliness. It's just like a modality thing. Like, this is how we do. And it's just having that awareness of like, what works here? What are people used to? And I think getting people to understand that, like, it's not one size fits all. This isn't proper. That's not proper. This is just like how we do it. And hoping, I think this is more of like an American, like, generally cultural thing, hoping that how we do it isn't destructive to other people.
Which, as we go internationally, I'm sure we find, to your point, culturally different, even within the U.S., how people listen, how people talk to each other, how people communicate based on relationships and based on culture, all varies significantly. And so I'm ready for MTV to make the Listening Table show a reality. Let's tour coast to coast, have Orly be the star, and let's see some of those differences, because I think it's important to learn. We had on an incredible person on the podcast. He's a religious literacy expert, learned about religion all across the world and how to bring that back to the U.S. so people can be more accepting of people with different backgrounds than us. That same concept of religious differences and us learning about it and accepting it so we can communicate better with people also translates to culture and our communication skills. We should know how to communicate respectfully and better with people across the world. And so I think your mission, Orly, is so cool.
I think it just comes down to like, is there a right answer to this? I don't know. Right?
No way. There's no right answer to communication.
There's no right answer. We can have our way of thinking about it. But if your intentions are good, then, it doesn't matter if I'm the one always speaking and Sam's always sitting there listening, or vice versa, or neither of us are just sitting there and we have 5 questions and the only thing we say the entire conversation is 5 questions to you, Orly, and you drive the conversation. But if it's with good intention, I think that's an effective way of communication.
Yeah, for sure. It's all about being clear about your intentions. If the other person gets it, you're good. And if they don't get it, you need to be able to clarify it. And one of the coolest things about conversations is it's such a low risk. How many % of your conversations are low risk? I mean, you guys probably have 5 conversations a day minimum on average. I don't know, maybe less, maybe more. But you guys talk a lot. One conversation to the next, it's a whole new ball game. The last time I tried out this cool new catchphrase that Sam thought was corny. Whoops, Maybe I'll try a different catchphrase this time. I don't know. Like, you get to try so many different things, and you also get to rewind and be like, hey, like last time we hung out, I said I thought it would be cool if you were more excited to see me, and you weren't. Like, I want you to be more excited to see me next time. And so why don't we make a deal? Every third time that we see each other in person, I just want you to go, hell yeah. 1 out of 3 times. Not every third, but like 33% of the time, I want you to be super stoked to see me. And you're like, okay, that's kind of considerable. Why, that's worth a shot. Could be worth at least like a consideration.
I like that rule. I'm gonna incorporate that right now, Parker. Every third time you see me, I want you to say, "Hell yeah, what's up, Sam?" I think that make me feel appreciated.
How about vice versa? But every time you see me, hell yeah,
Parker. Good morning.
Is that good?
Yeah. It's a demand. I mean, you got to see if he can play the game. You got to be able to kind of remind him, like, hey, you're not stoked to see me. And if he's not stoked to see you every time, then like bigger problems that are worth discussing.
That's a good point.
Very fair.
It's like, let's just discuss this. What's going on? And oftentimes I feel like people avoid that because it's like, oh, we got tension here. And it's like, we don't want to approach that conversation because there's tension. And what ends up happening? The tension continues to live on. And it's still part of the next conversation, and then the next conversation, and then the next conversation until you approach it.
Yeah. Hard to have these conversations, too. Shout out to me for talking about it. Having the conversations themselves are tough. What's going on? Poof, I don't know. Easier to have with friends.
Yeah, definitely easier to have with friends. But that brings me to another question, Orly, about the idea that some conversations people avoid because they're controversial. Some conversations people avoid because they feel like their voice isn't heard. Or some conversations people avoid because they feel as if their opinion is in the minority. And then as a result of that, because of what they expect society to respond to them with, they don't speak at all.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your thoughts on just freedom of speech and where we're at right now, where freedom of speech, I feel like, has become very divisive in this country.
Yes. Big question. Huge question. Smarter
Massive.
people than me will fail to solve it. So this is my manageable goal. My target audience is friends and family. If you hear what I'm talking about, it's not about setting tables up. It's not about inspiring people to set up tables in their place in the world, which would be awesome. All over the world. We got a Discord channel, and I do every Sunday I have how to set up your own table in your own community. And we got people doing in the Middle East, people in South America. I mean, it's incredible. In Europe, it's wild. But my goal is not to inspire people to do something crazy like I'm doing, or ridiculous, I guess. Crazy's a word for it. But to say, like, hey, when's the last time you called your parents? When's the last time you called your siblings? When's the last time you reached out to a friend just to say, what's good? Just to call your friend and say, hey, I was thinking about you. Deuces. I have a couple cousins. The metaphor I like to use is like, you could be like a fireplace. Fireplaces are warm when they're lit. You could be like a lit fireplace. And a lit fireplace is warm. It doesn't matter if anyone's sitting in front of it. But anyone who sees a fireplace knows that sitting in front of that's going to be warm. You could be the fireplace. You don't care if someone's sitting next to you. But you know that someone who needs a fireplace can sit there. So you do the work to say, hey, the windows, they're clear enough that someone could see inside and say, oh, there's something good in there. So I have friends and family members that I just call. If they don't pick up, I don't care. I'll call them again next month or a couple weeks from now. If they don't, I have 2 cousins. Shout out to these 2 cousins. You keep me humble. Who I call every, once a month, maybe twice a month. I've called them every this many times for like a year and a half, and neither of them have picked up the phone one time. Never got a text back, never got a phone call back. I've seen them. I've seen them in person. And I go, yo, what's good? Yeah, not great with my phone. Love that you call, though. You got it. I'm good. We're good. I don't take it personally because it takes me 30 seconds of listening to a dial tone, and they know I'm thinking of them, and it really costs me nothing. So it's cool. Just
communication's effort, right? It's effort as well.
A little bit. I mean, if you send a text message that says like thinking about you, like, is that effort? Bravery, maybe. Willingness to not be ignored, I guess. If people don't respond to your texts, it makes you sad. But if you know that person can't stop you from texting them again, as a friend, if you trust each other, obviously, of course, like, let me know if I'm bothering you is an important part of the conversation. But, like, the fire's hot. Like, you sit down whenever you're ready. I'm kicking it.
Keep the fire warm. That's
right.
I love
it back.
So how to solve America is hard, but how to solve your friends and family and let people know, because loneliness, especially after this pandemic, is brutal. People are feeling like they're so isolated. Just getting a phone call from a friend, literally, without exaggeration, can be the difference between life and death for some people. It really can be. Depression is real. This mental illness is insane. I volunteer for the suicide hotline. I don't really want to go into that much because it's a whole bunch of stories of just sadness. But basically, everyone who calls is someone who doesn't have somebody to talk to. And it's like, you can just call a friend, say what's up, and it can be the difference in their life to get them through the week, the day, just to know one person is thinking about them, not fixing anything for them, but just thinking about them, that they can call someone and say, hey, man, like, you want to come over watch a football game? It's going to be a good one. Even if they don't want to come, just knowing you're there. Or why are you inviting me to come? You live across the country. It's like, just think about you.
Keep the fire warm.
Yeah.
Keep the fire warm.
Well, if you were in my city, I would want you to come. I'm not in your city. I haven't been there. Well, if you ever find yourself here, just letting people know.
Stoking the fire, man.
Let them know you're there. That's what I do.
Incredible metaphor. I know Parker's huge on it. We talked on the podcast before about just calling people, letting people know that you're there and you want to say hi. And it's something I've been practicing as well. Orly, I call my two grandmothers, are both widowed, and I call them every Sunday. I haven't missed a Sunday in over 2 years.
Wow.
Every Sunday, I will call them. And we sometimes have the same exact conversation every week.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Please.
Do you ever get bored of those conversations?
Of course. And I've challenged myself to try to stop putting in headphones and multitasking, right? It's on a Sunday. I'm sometimes doing laundry. I'm doing other things. I try to challenge myself to just sit or lay on my bed or on my couch and actually, even if it's similar conversations, like to be in the moment, because it's very easy to zone out and say, oh, I'm good, Grandma. I had a good work week. How was your week? Oh, you played canasta. Oh, you went to the club. Like, what'd you have for lunch? Cool. Talk to you next Sunday. Love you. That's very easy. The more and more I do this, the more and more I realize how lucky I am that I can do that every Sunday. And the more and more I want to be fully present and in the moment with it, which proves to be difficult. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But it's something I want to try to challenge myself to continue to do. So,
can I try and challenge you with something that I think is exciting for me that I've been challenging myself with? Because my grandfather, and I call my grandparents, I have two grandparents on my dad's side. That's it. Shout out to my mom's grandparents. They were for real. My grandfather, he tells the same story all the time. He was in the Navy, and I've heard every story you could possibly tell about him being in the Navy. But in the effort of trying to become the best, having the best conversations I can, and that means having the most fun for me, really. Every conversation can be fun if you let it be. So I've heard these stories, but I always find a way to learn something new now. You know, what was your favorite captain? Who was your favorite officer? What was the biggest city you docked in? So I'm going to hear the story, but I'm going to change it up. Whoa, tell me about the break room that you used to kick it in the most. You know, did you ever puke off the side of the boat? And so, yeah, all of a sudden I've heard the same story, but now I've heard the same story differently over and over again. I'm going to challenge you to have these conversations with your grandma. Yeah, okay, who beasted at Canasta this week? I don't know. Is that person traditionally a beast, or is it like a lucky game? I don't even know. Honestly, I don't even know what Canasta is. So, it sounds like a riot, though.
The way I think about it is like we have the idea, we have the topic, and the story is just a place and time. But we know time spans a lot of moments and a lot of different things that have happened. And it's exploring that web beyond the central base of the idea. Like there's in some cases, unlimited ways to go is what you're saying. Wow. That's a really
with memory,
awesome way.
It's crazy. Because your grandparents, memory, the way synapses work is like, you remember big things, but if you get the right question, you start, like, the more you spend time in a memory, the more, like, tangential memories you have. So you might ask a question about, how old were you when you joined the military? Did you plan it? Blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden you hear the story that he was going to get on one boat, but it was a dangerous boat, but he had to learn how to type faster if he wanted to be on this. And it was like a whole, like, all of a sudden you learn about the challenges people overcame, the day to day, and you just get these incredible details that they might not even remember themselves. And then you try and challenge them, oh, do you remember this crazy thing? You ever bring a book on the boat? What was the book? Blah, blah. There's an infinite way to go. I mean, especially with old people, like, their stories.
That's my 2023 challenge. I'm going to keep you posted, and you'll keep me honest on it, Orly, I know.
Yeah.
To take the conversation up a notch. I think that's cool.
There's also something I love doing is just calling a random person who I, love or, was close with at some point in my life. Just calling them up. You haven't spoken in how many months or how many years. And it's like, wow, this is like, they're like, why are you calling? Like, see how you're doing. Say hi. And like, that's the coolest. That's the best. It's like, you thought, to your point, where it's like, you thought about me. It was like, yeah, but like, also want to see how you're doing. And then you never know where the conversation goes because you guys haven't talked in so long, and there's infinite amount of places you could go to. How's the last 6 months of your job been? How's the girlfriend? How's the city, the weather, or a book you read? How's the podcast? It could go a million different ways. And I'm with you, Orly. Like, none of these podcasts, we've had 205 episodes of the podcast. We've had 205 conversations, right? That are unique.
Yeah.
Every single one is different. It would be impossible to have the same conversation. Some are more interesting than others. Some are more fun than others. Some are more intense, less intense. Some we talk about topics that have no relevance at all to Sam and I. Some are about topics that have relevance to every single person in the whole world. But what's unique about that is they're all unique.
It's what makes it fun. It's what makes what all of our missions are pretty incredible. Whether it's listening, whether it's telling a story, whether it's giving people a platform to feel heard, to be seen, to feel valued. That's what's really cool, and why I knew we would hit it off, and just united by wanting to elevate and communicate and tell stories. And so I think the tips are incredible. I want to make sure we have time. We have a section, Orly, that we love called our rapid fire section. And I have a couple that I wanted to pick your brain on.
Shoot.
The first one's fun. The first one's easy. Where is your favorite spot to set up your listening table? And then where is your dream spot to set it up? When MTV sponsors this, we got an RV with your name painted on the side and we're touring the country. Where are we going?
Dang, that's a great question. My favorite spot's probably got to be Hermosa Beach by the pier because it's close to where I live. People are always out. It's just a beautiful location. A lot of people are just hanging out there. And the best places to set up are places people would go on a walk somewhere just to, like, hang. Shopping centers are pretty bad because people want to buy stuff and leave. So Hermosa Beach, favorite spot. Lock it in. The dream spot is such a fascinating thought. I have no idea. I think that I would love to do it in New York.
That's a cool spot.
I got family in New York. What if I could bring my grandma to do it? Somewhere on Long Island or wherever she lives. I don't know, man. What is a cool spot? I think it would be really fascinating. This isn't a specific spot, but to do it at like a company, if someone's like, yeah, and then I got to hear about what the experience was, from a bunch of different people. How are they feeling about their experience with this company? And then maybe I could put together some kind of, all my tables are anonymous. I can say like, workplace guys, seems like everyone's got beef with something. Maybe you should check that out. I think that's
a business idea right there.
Maybe it's a business thing. Maybe that's literally what you guys do. That may literally be your job. Consulting is making companies better. But I think doing it in some way that... See, this is the thing, and this is why I'm stumbling on this question. I know it's a rapid-fire question, but I'll answer it quick. Is when I set up my table, I don't think about more people is better. Because I think, if I sit up for 2.5 hours, one person sitting down, if one person sits down for the whole 2.5 hours, it could be the most important conversation they've had in their whole life. And no one's ever listened to them talk for more than 15 minutes at one time. And all of a sudden they've got 2 hours to figure something out loud with no one trying to force it on them. So I think like where it'd be cool, somewhere huge and popular and bustling. But, if I had 120 minutes in a really popular place and 120 people sat down, I would have 0 good conversations.
All right, we're gonna work on that dream list then, because I'm manifesting this tour bus concept into reality, and I think there are so many cool places that come to mind that I think you can have impactful conversations at.
Okay,
how cool would it be to capture like in Disney World, like families' first vacations that they've been saving for decades, the experience they want to share with their kid. Like, that's a cool spot. That could be
I'm giving you a dream spot. I'm taking it back. I'm
go ahead.
I want to do it
ready.
At my own house. And this takes a lot of shapes. It could be like when I have a family, I set up a table and I get to hear about my family, what they're going through in a way that might not be a traditional family thing. But I think that would be amazing. I also mean in the sense of maybe I could just do it right here in this chair and have people kind of chat roulette style, I guess, show up. But I'm trying to say in a way that if I can do it at my house, you can do it in your house, and you can listen to your family. And so I think that's the best way to do it is like your dining room table is a listening table anytime you're sitting at it. So if I could do it, you can do it, and that's the goal. Or the White House lawn. I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
Or Shea Stadium, but they demolished it.
Yeah, I was going to say, Madison Square Park is a pretty good place. There's a lot of people. I live right nearby, so Orly, if you set up a table there, I'll be there. And I'll just listen with you. I'll just listen with you.
I'm not kidding
if
at all.
If you're coming, I'm not even kidding. Here, we're not kidding.
No, I'm not either.
We are not messing around. I will be there, and I will sit with you.
You sit with me for 2.5 hours. You don't say a word. You'll have a chance to talk. You will have a chance to talk, I promise. And then I'm going to get my microphone, and we're going to do a after the table podcast. That'll be you can listen to on my little podcast thing. That's what I'm setting up. I recorded my first episode last week.
Let's go.
And you'll be a guest on mine.
I absolutely love that.
Same for you, Sam. It's all yours. Offers there.
He's a DC guy. Sam has access.
I'll be there.
Let's do it. We're doing it.
This Sam has access to the White House lawn. I heard Matt McParland.
Let me see what strings I can pull. Yeah, I'll talk to my people. Great answer. All right.
Question
our next
one.
rapid
What
fire.
do you got?
Ooh, man.
Ahead,
Next rapid fire question.
I'll do this one fast.
Okay. Ooh, I don't know. This is going to be tough. What is a topic that came up in conversation that you will never forget?
Oh, man. There's a lot of them. And I'm going to go with something that's light and friendly because the sad ones are easy to remember and they stick with you. But this one's also really important. There's a kid, probably like 7 years old, maybe less, somewhere around there, young. And his family was over there on the bikes. I was at Hermosa Beach, and he walks over, and his family's over there. You know, he's by himself. They know he's not like, you know, in a bad way. Oh, you see that? His family is over there, and he comes over, and he sits down at the table, and he says, I have this beautiful long hair. He doesn't say that. He has long hair. He has this beautiful long hair. He says, I have long hair, and people at school think I'm kind of weird for it. I have one friend who thinks it's cool, but everyone else wants me to cut my hair, and I really like it. I melt inside of my body because I was that kid. The kid with the long hair that really nobody thought was cool. People thought I was like a girl. I liked it a lot. I felt like I was like a samurai. It was super cool, but it was uncomfortable for me. And not the hair, but the thoughts, the way people would talk to me and say stuff about it. And the kid said, should I get a haircut? And I just wanted to say, do whatever you want, kid. You're awesome. The hair is awesome. It's your life. You're the boss. You're freaking ripping it, too. You're super sick. But I didn't do that because I'm not here to give advice. I'm here to listen. And what I kind of said to him was, okay, so you like your long hair, and your friend thinks it's cool, and most of the people don't. So if you keep your long hair, you're happy. And he goes, yeah. I say, and if you cut your long hair, then you're also kind of happy, right? And he's like, yeah, I guess so. And so I was like, so either choice you make is the right choice. Do you have to cut your hair anytime soon? He's like, not really. So I'm like, either choice you make is the right choice, and you don't have to choose until whenever you want to. And he's like, whoa. And they just ran away. And then his parents came up and were like, we have no idea what you told him. And I was like, all right. Sticks with me because it was a moment where I really wanted to say all of I've been through this, kid, do your thing. And I realized he doesn't need to know that. He's doing his own thing. I'm listening. Boom.
That's an incredible story of restraint on your part to not give that advice. But I love it. You're happy either way. I think in a lot of the decisions we make, we're going to be happy either way. So that was a good story. I want to wrap with our most popular and our favorite question, Orly. Something that I think is so unique. Everyone, similar to all the conversations you've had, very different conversations with all these people listening to these different stories. We've had on, over 100 guest elevators, and we ask all of them for what we call your mental motto, a phrase that you live your life by. And not one has been the same. So we want to ask you, Orly Israel, what is your mental motto?
My mental motto is this. It's not a party if no one is dancing. This is basically how I live my life, and it will be on my tombstone. It's not a party if no one's dancing. What does this mean? It means you're the you set the vibe for your life. And just think about it like if you go to a party and you're deaf. If there's a party and everyone's standing around and you're deaf, are you going to know if music is even playing if nobody's dancing? What a boring event that might be. Oh, I went to a work social. I don't know what it is. But if you see one guy just moving and grooving, you go, okay, yeah, we're actually at a party. Everyone's just standing around. So it only takes one person to set the tone for any space. And I think about it like dancing. If you ever see me at a party, I will be vibing. Or if someone else is holding the vibe down, yeah, maybe I'll be chilling. But if no one's vibing, I'll be dancing. You got to know it's a party. You're on mute.
I love it. I love it. I love dancing. I want to dance more. I feel like I actually got to be able to dance a little bit over the weekend, and it was just so much fun. It's always a great reminder how much fun it is. But, man, Orly, the conversation obviously it has to come to an end at some point because this is going on
it's going on.
podcast platform, so it can't go forever. However, for sure, this conversation will continue, whether it's at your table on another podcast, or maybe, who knows, we'll meet each other in the middle of the street in some random place down the road. You never know. But honestly, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us and sharing your story. And I'm inspired. I'm inspired by what you're doing. I'm inspired about your mission. I'm inspired about how you hold yourself accountable. I'm inspired by just how you sit and you're able to hear out the individuals who may or may not be heard. And maybe you won't know the impact that that makes on their lives. But I think it's really cool because Sam and I surely know that there's an impact that you're making. And if your 100,000 followers on Instagram doesn't show for it, or the one person who, like you said earlier, had to make a life or death decision, ends up making the right decision.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what it's all about. So I just can't thank you enough. This has been an amazing
pleasure.
Conversation.
Hey, can I ask you a question before we wrap up? I might have missed this in the intro that I wasn't a part of, but do I get to know what elevator number I am?
Sam's
Such a
got
good
it.
question. You do. Let me pull them up. You,
I think like 112, 113.
no, 114.
Strong. I like
Strong
that.
number.
It's a
That's
good
a
number.
strong number. That's a strong
Yeah.
number. And we are, like Parker said, obviously so honored to welcome you to the nation. You are part of a pretty elite crew of incredible people that are elevating their lives and the community around them. And I'm honored we're friends now, and I can't wait to support each other on this journey, man. So, Orly, thank you for joining us. It's been a blast, man.
It's a pleasure. Can't wait for more.
I cannot wait for more. Hopefully in person in New York and DC, coming to a listening table to you soon. Elevation Nation. Until next week. Peace.